When patience runs out, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the Stellar Assembly's Grand Station, watching the swirling nebula beyond through the massive transparent walls. The colors danced like oil on water, beautiful and mesmerizing, but she couldn't appreciate their beauty today. In her hand, she held the datapad containing humanity's latest request for medical nanobots, the same request they had submitted 47 times over the past 15 years. 15 years. Sarah remembered being young and optimistic when she first joined the diplomatic corps. She believed that patience and persistence would eventually win the day. She thought the other species just needed time to accept humanity as equals. That belief had died slowly, one rejection at a time. Commander Jake Morrison approached her, his military uniform crisp despite the long hours they had been working. His weathered face showed the strain of their situation. "Ambassador, the vote is about to commence. Are you ready?" Sarah nodded and followed him back to the main chamber. The Stellar Assembly was an impressive sight. Representatives from 200 different species filled the circular amphitheater. Some floated in liquid-filled containers, others stood on multiple legs, and many had forms that defied easy description. At the center, the High Counselor Zethkar, a 7-foot-tall reptilian being with silver scales, called the session to order. "We now address Request 47 Gamma from the Human Federation," Zethkar announced, his voice carrying through the chamber's advanced translation systems. "The request concerns access to standard medical nanobots for treatment of genetic disorders." Sarah rose from her seat. "Honorable counselors, humanity has presented detailed evidence of our technological readiness, our peaceful intentions, and our contribution to galactic society. We have met every requirement set before us. Our people are dying from diseases that these nanobots could easily cure." Minister Velta, the trade representative from the Aquatic Collective, spoke next. His translator converted his complex clicks and whistles into standard galactic. "The humans have indeed shown progress, but their species is still young. Perhaps in another decade, they will demonstrate the maturity required for such advanced technology." Dr. Elena Vasquez, Sarah's chief science advisor, whispered urgently in her ear. "Ambassador, I've just received some disturbing information from our intelligence network." Sarah frowned but maintained her composure as the debate continued around them. Speaker after speaker rose to voice their concerns about humanity's readiness. The arguments were always the same: too young, too aggressive, too unpredictable. Meanwhile, Sarah listened to Elena's shocking revelation. The Kelran Republic received nanobots just 3 months after requesting them. Elena whispered. The synthetic collective got theirs in 6 weeks. Even the nomadic tribes, who've been spacefaring for only 50 years, received approval in under a year. Sarah's blood ran cold. She had suspected discrimination, but this was proof. While humanity had been denied for 15 years, other species had received the same technology almost immediately. The pattern was clear and damning. The vote proceeded as expected. 147 species voted against the request, 38 abstained, and only 15 voted in favor. The same result as always. "The request is denied," Zethkar announced with what sounded like satisfaction. "The Human Federation may resubmit their application in 2 years, provided they demonstrate continued peaceful development." Sarah stood slowly, her decision crystallizing in her mind. "High Counselor, members of the Assembly, I have a statement to make." The chamber fell quiet. Sarah had never requested to speak after a vote before. For 15 years, humanity has participated in this assembly in good faith. She began, her voice steady despite the anger burning inside her. "We have followed every rule, met every requirement, and contributed to galactic civilization in countless ways. Our engineers maintain the infrastructure that keeps this very station operational. Our doctors serve in medical facilities across 40 systems. Our farmers feed hungry populations on dozens of worlds." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some representatives seemed uncomfortable with her tone. "Today, I learned that while humanity has been denied basic medical technology for 15 years, other species have received the same technology in mere months. This is not about readiness or maturity. This is about prejudice and fear." Zethkar's scales flashed with annoyance. "Ambassador Chen, Such accusations are inappropriate and unfounded. Sarah smiled coldly. Are they? Dr. Vasquez, please share our findings with the assembly. Alina activated her tablet, and the main display showed a comprehensive analysis of technology transfer approvals over the past 2 decades. The data was stark and undeniable. Humanity was the only species that had been consistently denied basic technologies while others received them rapidly. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers and angry protests. Several representatives demanded to know how humans had obtained confidential voting records. Others tried to defend the assembly's decisions. Sarah waited for the noise to die down before continuing. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Stellar Assembly. All human personnel will be recalled from assembly facilities and projects. All cooperative agreements are terminated. The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives shouted questions and objections. Zethkar pounded his ceremonial staff for order. You cannot simply withdraw, he roared. The economic implications alone are your problem, not ours, Sarah interrupted. We are done begging for scraps from your table. We are done being treated as inferior when we have proven ourselves superior in countless ways. Commander Morrison stepped forward. All human ships have been recalled to Earth space. All human personnel at assembly facilities have received evacuation orders. The withdrawal is already in progress. The reality of the situation began to sink in. Human engineers maintained the life support systems on 17 major stations. Human doctors staffed 34 medical facilities. Human farmers supplied food to 43 worlds. Human pilots operated 60% of the intersystem transport fleet. Minister Veltoth rose urgently. Ambassador, surely we can discuss this. Perhaps accommodations can be made. Accommodations? Sarah laughed bitterly. After 15 years of discrimination, after watching other species receive in months what we've been denied for decades. No, Minister. The time for accommodation has passed. She gathered her materials and headed for the exit. Jake and Alina followed, along with the rest of the human delegation. Behind them, the assembly chamber descended into panic as representatives began to realize the full scope of humanity's involvement in galactic civilization. On the transport back to Earth, Sarah received reports from across human space. The withdrawal was proceeding smoothly. Human crews were evacuating stations, ships were returning to Earth ports, and agricultural shipments were being diverted back to human worlds. The reaction from alien governments was immediate and desperate. Ambassador, her communications officer reported, we're receiving urgent messages from 43 different governments. They're all requesting immediate meetings. Sarah nodded grimly. Tell them we'll consider their requests once they demonstrate they can treat us as equals rather than supplicants. As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Sarah felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness for the years wasted in futile diplomacy, but relief that humanity was finally free to chart its own course. They had tried to be part of the galactic community, but the community had rejected them. Now they would show the galaxy what humans could accomplish when they weren't held back by alien prejudice. Dr. Vasquez joined her at the observation window. Do you think we made the right choice? Sarah watched Earth's blue surface rotate slowly beneath them. Alina, we spent 15 years proving we deserved equality. They spent 15 years proving they would never give it to us. The choice was made for us long ago. We just finally had the courage to accept it. The first phase of humanity's great withdrawal was complete. What came next would determine not just humanity's future, but the future of galactic civilization itself. The species that had dismissed humans as too young and too aggressive were about to learn what happened when they pushed the most adaptable species in the galaxy too far. In the depths of space, emergency signals began transmitting from stations across the galaxy. Without human maintenance crews, critical systems were starting to fail. The galaxy was about to learn just how much they had depended on the species they had spent 15 years keeping down. Sarah Chen had fired the first shot in a war that wouldn't be fought with weapons, but with the simple act of withdrawal. Sometimes the most powerful statement wasn't a declaration of war, but a declaration of independence. And humanity had just declared their independence from a galaxy that had never truly accepted them. The real test was just beginning. When the Foundation crumbles, 2 weeks after humanity's withdrawal from the Stellar Assembly, President Maria Santos stood in the Situation Room beneath the rebuilt Geneva complex. Wall-mounted screens displayed a galaxy in crisis. Emergency signals flashed red across dozens of systems where human-maintained infrastructure was failing. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades were shutting down one by one. Madam President, Captain Rex Sullivan reported from his position at the Central Console. We're receiving distress calls from the Kepler station in the Vega system. Their atmospheric processors are failing without human maintenance crews. They have approximately 72 hours of breathable air remaining. Maria nodded grimly. What's their population? 43,000 beings from 12 different species, Rex replied. They're requesting immediate assistance. And the Centauri Trade Hub? Maria asked. Complete shutdown, came the response from her economic advisor. The navigation systems were designed and maintained entirely by human engineers. Without them, ships can't safely navigate the asteroid field that protects the station. 6 major trade routes have been severed. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the head of Earth's biotechnology division, looked up from her tablet. Madam President, we're also receiving reports that several worlds are experiencing food shortages. It seems human agricultural techniques were feeding more populations than anyone realized. Maria walked to the large window overlooking Lake Geneva. The irony wasn't lost on her that this crisis was unfolding in the same place where humanity had once struggled to unite its own species. Now they faced the challenge of deciding how to interact with an entire galaxy that had finally realized its dependence on human innovation and work ethic. How many official requests for assistance have we received? She asked. 117 as of this morning, her secretary reported. That's up from 94 yesterday. The requests range from desperate pleas to barely disguised demands that we resume our previous roles. And the Stellar Assembly. High Counselor Zeth Carr has requested an emergency meeting. He's offering significant concessions in exchange for humanity's return to the galactic community. Maria laughed without humor. Concessions. After 15 years of systematic discrimination, now they want to make concessions. A new alert chimed across the room's speakers. Priority message from Ambassador Chen aboard the flagship Unity, the communications officer announced. Sarah's image appeared on the main screen, transmitted from Earth's most advanced warship as it patrolled the outer system. Madam President, we have visitors. A delegation from the Aquatic Collective has arrived at the edge of our solar system. They're requesting permission to approach Earth directly. What's their stated purpose? Maria asked. Minister Velta claims they want to negotiate a mutually beneficial arrangement for the restoration of essential services. Sarah replied with obvious skepticism. Dr. Tanaka stood up excitedly. Madam President, this might be the opportunity we've been waiting for. I need to brief you on our recent breakthrough. Maria raised an eyebrow. What breakthrough? While the Assembly was debating whether we deserved their nanobots, our research teams have been developing our own. And Madam President, ours are better, significantly better. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Tanaka continued. The alien nanobots work on a broad spectrum of species, but they're not optimized for any particular biology. Our versions are not only more effective for humans, but we created variants that work better for 17 different alien physiologies than their own technology does. President Santos felt a smile tug at her lips. Show me. Dr. Tanaka activated her presentation system. Here are the comparative results. Our nanobots show a 97% success rate for genetic disorder treatment in humans, compared to the alien version's estimated 68%. But here's the remarkable part: we've solved problems in their technology that they didn't even know existed. The data was stunning. Human innovation, driven by necessity and free from the constraints of assembly oversight, had leapfrogged decades of alien development in just 2 weeks. How is this possible? Captain Sullivan asked. Human creativity and desperation make a powerful combination, Dr. Tanaka explained. When you tell humans something is impossible, they tend to prove you wrong. When you deny humans something they need, they build it themselves, and they build it better. A new communication alert interrupted the briefing. Madam President, the operator called out, we're receiving an emergency transmission from the Stellar Assembly. High Counselor Zethkar is requesting immediate communication. He says it's a matter of galactic security. Put him through, Maria ordered. Zethkar's reptilian features appeared on screen, but he looked haggard. His usually pristine silver scales appeared dull, and his eyes showed signs of stress. President Santos, I speak for the entire Stellar Assembly when I say that this situation has gone too far. Innocent beings are dying because of your people's withdrawal. Maria's expression hardened. Innocent beings have been dying for 15 years while you denied us medical technology. Where was your concern then? That was different, Zethkar protested. This was about ensuring galactic stability and preventing the misuse of advanced technology. By species you deemed inferior, Maria countered. Tell me, High Counselor, how many beings died in the Rigel plague outbreak 3 years ago? The one that could have been prevented with the nanobots you denied us. Zethkar's silence was telling. Dr. Tanaka stepped forward. High Counselor, perhaps you should know that while your assembly was debating our worthiness, we solved the nanobots problem ourselves. Our versions are superior to yours in every measurable way. The alien leader's eyes widened. That's impossible. Those technologies took our civilization centuries to develop. And it took humans 2 weeks to improve upon them, Maria said proudly. Perhaps your assembly should reconsider which species is truly advanced. Before Zethkar could respond, another alert sounded. Captain Sullivan looked up from his console with amazement. Madam President, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the outer rim. It appears to be a fleet approaching our system. Sarah's voice came through from the Unity. I can confirm visual contact with the fleet. It's massive 37 ships from at least 15 different species. They're flying under assembly escort, but this isn't a military formation. These appear to be diplomatic vessels. Maria realized what was happening. They're not coming to threaten us. They're coming to negotiate. Individually, the Assembly's power structure is crumbling. Over the next several hours, Earth received formal diplomatic requests from species that had never bothered to establish direct relations with humanity before. The Synthetic Collective, which had received their nanobots in 6 weeks, was now requesting human-designed upgrades. The Crystal Communion, whose energy beings had dismissed humans as inferior life forms, were asking for human engineers to repair their fractured homeworld. Most surprisingly, the nomadic tribes who had received nanobots in under a year were now offering to share their navigational technologies in exchange for human agricultural expertise. They had apparently discovered that human farming techniques could triple their food production in space-based environments. It's remarkable, observed Dr. Tanaka as she reviewed the incoming requests. Every species that dismissed us as too primitive is now discovering that we had already surpassed them in multiple areas. Ambassador Chen's voice crackled through the comm system again. Madam President, I'm receiving word that several Assembly member species are withdrawing from the organization. The Kelleran Republic just announced they're establishing direct diplomatic relations with Earth. The Synthetic Collective is following suit. Maria looked around the Situation Room at her advisors and staff. Ladies and gentlemen, we're witnessing the collapse of the old galactic order. The question now is what we build to replace it. Captain Sullivan pulled up strategic displays showing human space and the surrounding systems. Our defensive capabilities have improved dramatically since the withdrawal. The ships and personnel we recalled have been retrofitted with new technologies developed by our research teams. We're not just independent now. We're actually more advanced than most Assembly members. But what about the beings still trapped on failing stations? Dr. Tanaka asked. We can't let innocent people die because their governments were prejudiced against us. Maria considered this carefully. You're right. Begin humanitarian rescue operations for any station or world in immediate danger. But make it clear that this is temporary assistance. If they want permanent solutions, they'll need to negotiate with us as equals. The screens around the room showed the galaxy transforming in real time. Trade routes were being rerouted through human space. Research partnerships were forming between Earth and progressive alien species. The rigid hierarchy of the Stellar Assembly was giving way to a more flexible network of bilateral relationships. Madam President, her communication officer announced, Minister Veltot's ship has arrived in Earth orbit. He's requesting permission to come aboard the surface station for direct negotiations. Maria smiled. Tell the minister that we'll be happy to meet with him as representatives of one sovereign nation to another. The days of humans begging for consideration are over. As rescue ships launch from Earth to assist the failing stations and diplomatic shuttles arrived from across the galaxy, President Santos realized that humanity had achieved something remarkable. They hadn't conquered their oppressors or demanded revenge. Instead, they had simply demonstrated their true worth by walking away and letting their contributions speak for themselves. The galaxy was learning what humans had known all along. They weren't just another species seeking handouts. They were innovators, problem solvers, and builders who had been held back by prejudice and fear. Now, free from those constraints, they were reshaping galactic civilization itself. The foundation of the old order had crumbled, and from its ruins, something better was beginning to emerge. When equals meet. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal from the Stellar Assembly, Fleet Admiral Chen Wei stood on the bridge of the flagship Terra Nova, watching the most remarkable diplomatic gathering in galactic history unfold in Earth orbit. 57 different species had sent representatives to what was being called the Geneva Accords, a complete restructuring of galactic civilization based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical dominance. Sarah's sister had risen quickly through the ranks after humanity's withdrawal, leading the rapid expansion and modernization of Earth's space fleet. The ships surrounding Earth weren't just more numerous than before, they were more advanced than anything the old assembly had possessed. Admiral, Commander Torres reported from the tactical station. The synthetic collective's ships are requesting permission to approach the space station. They're carrying the new processing cores we helped them design. Shen Wei nodded approvingly. The synthetic collective had been among the first to realize that human creativity could solve problems their algorithmic thinking couldn't approach. In exchange for human innovation, they had shared manufacturing techniques that allowed Earth to build ships and stations at unprecedented speed. Grant them clearance. What's the status on the Kelleran medical ship? Docked at Bay 7. Dr. Thompson's team is already aboard, teaching their doctors how to use the new nanobots effectively. Apparently, our improvements work even better on Kelleran physiology than we expected. Dr. Marcus Thompson had become something of a legend in the 6 months since the withdrawal. His biotechnology team had not only perfected human medical nanobots, but had created specialized versions for 34 different alien species, versions that were more effective than anything the Assembly had ever developed. The transformation hadn't been limited to medicine. Human engineers had revolutionized faster than light travel, creating drives that were not only more efficient but safer for organic crews. Human agricultural specialists had developed food production techniques that could triple crop yields in space-based environments. Human computer scientists had designed quantum processing systems that surpassed even the synthetic collective's previous capabilities. Admiral, the communications officer called out, Chancellor Keth Mary is requesting a private meeting before the main session begins. She says it's urgent. Shen Wei considered this. Chancellor Keth Mary had emerged as the leader of what was being called the Reform Coalition species that had broken away from the Assembly to establish direct relations with Earth. Her own people, the ethereal communion, had initially been among humanity's harshest critics, dismissing them as crude matter-based life forms. Tell the Chancellor I'll meet her in Conference Room Alpha in 30 minutes. As Chen Wei made her way through the massive space station that now served as Earth's diplomatic center, she marveled at how much had changed. The station itself was a testament to human engineering prowess, built in record time using techniques that combined human innovation with alien materials and technologies. Unlike the cold, imposing architecture of the old assembly station, this one was designed to make all visitors feel welcome. Chancellor Keth Mary was waiting in the conference room, her energy-based form shimmering with what Shen Wei had learned to recognize as nervousness. The ethereal were beings of pure energy who typically exuded confidence, so this display of uncertainty was significant. Admiral Chen, thank you for agreeing to meet with me, the Chancellor began, her translated voice carrying undertones of urgency. I bring disturbing news from the core worlds. Chen Wei sat across from the energy being, maintaining the calm demeanor that had served her well in countless negotiations. What kind of news, Chancellor? The remnants of the old assembly are planning something desperate. High Counselor Zethkar has convinced the hardline faction that humanity's rise represents an existential threat to galactic order. They're discussing military action. This wasn't entirely unexpected. Intelligence reports had suggested that the most conservative assembly members were growing increasingly desperate as more species abandoned the old system. What kind of military action? They're calling it a stabilization operation. Kethmary replied, her energy form flickering with agitation. The plan is to blockade Earth and force humanity back into their subordinate role within the assembly structure. They believe that without human support, the new coalition will collapse. Chen Wei felt a cold smile cross her face. I see. And what does the Reform Coalition intend to do about this threat? That's what I wanted to discuss with you. 43 species have pledged to defend Earth if the Assembly takes military action. We owe humanity too much to stand by and watch them be suppressed again. Chancellor, I appreciate the gesture, but I have to ask, do you think humanity needs protection? Kethmary's energy form pulsed with confusion. I'm not sure I understand the question. Chen Wai activated the room's display system, showing the current positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. 6 months ago, humanity had a small defensive fleet designed primarily for system patrol. Today, we have the most advanced military force in known space. Our ships are faster, our weapons are more precise, and our defensive systems are superior to anything the Assembly possesses. The energy being stared at the tactical display in amazement. How is this possible? The Assembly has been building military strength for thousands of years. And in those thousands of years, they became complacent, Chen Wai explained. They focused on maintaining existing technology rather than improving it. Humans, on the other hand, had to innovate constantly just to survive on our homeworld. When we applied that same innovative spirit to military technology, we didn't just catch up, we surpassed them. She pulled up additional displays showing comparative analyses of ship capabilities, weapon systems, and defensive technologies. Our new shield systems can deflect any weapon in the assembly arsenal. Our propulsion systems allow us to outrun any pursuit. Our sensors can detect assembly ships long before they can detect us. But surely the assembly's numbers advantage, Kethmary began, would be significant in a traditional conflict. Chen Wai agreed. But we're not planning a traditional conflict. If the Assembly wants war, they'll discover that humans fight very differently than they expect. The next day, representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the main conference hall for the formal signing of the Geneva Accords. The document represented a complete restructuring of galactic civilization, establishing principles of equality, mutual respect, and voluntary cooperation. President Santos delivered the opening address to the assembled delegates. 6 months ago, humanity withdrew from a system that treated us as inferior. Today, we gather as equals to build something better. The signing ceremony proceeded smoothly, with species after species formally abandoning the hierarchical assembly system in favor of the new cooperative framework. But Chen Wai remained alert, knowing that military units were moving in the outer systems. The crisis came 3 days after the accords were signed. High Counselor Zethkar arrived at the edge of the solar system with a fleet of 200 ships, demanding that Earth surrender and submit to assembly authority. President Santos, Zethkar announced in a galaxy-wide broadcast, humanity's rebellion against galactic order ends now. You will dissolve your illegal coalition and return to your proper place within the assembly structure or face the consequences. President Santos' response was broadcast from the same diplomatic station where the accords had been signed. High Counselor, you seem to be confused about the balance of power. Perhaps a demonstration is in order. Admiral Chen Wei had been waiting for this moment. At her signal, human ships throughout the galaxy revealed themselves. They had been monitoring assembly positions for weeks, gathering intelligence and preparing for exactly this confrontation. Counselor, President Santos continued, you currently have 200 ships at the edge of our system. We have 400 ships surrounding your homeworld. You have forces at 12 strategic locations throughout the galaxy. We have forces at 24 locations, including several you didn't know we discovered. The demonstration was overwhelming. Human ships appeared on sensors throughout assembly space, not attacking, but simply making their presence known. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't hiding or running. They were everywhere, and they were ready. But the most stunning revelation came when Admiral Chen White addressed the Assembly fleet directly. "High Counselor, we've been monitoring your communications for the past week. We know about your stabilization operation because we've been inside your computer networks since before you planned it. Your security systems, developed thousands of years ago and never updated, were no match for human cyber warfare capabilities. The psychological impact was devastating. The Assembly had built their power on the assumption of technological superiority, but humans had quietly surpassed them in every meaningful way. We don't want war," President Santos concluded her broadcast. "We never wanted war. We wanted equality, and when that was denied, we achieved superiority. The choice now is yours. Accept the new reality and join us in building a better galaxy, or cling to the past and become irrelevant." The Assembly fleet withdrew without firing a shot. Over the following weeks, a remarkable transformation occurred. Even the most conservative Assembly members began requesting to join the new cooperative framework. High Counselor Zeth Karg himself eventually arrived on Earth, not as a conqueror, but as a supplicant seeking forgiveness and requesting membership in the new galactic community. Admiral Chen Wei stood once again on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching as former enemies worked alongside former allies to build something unprecedented. A truly cooperative galactic civilization. Species that had spent millennia in rigid hierarchies were learning to work together as equals. Dr. Thompson joined her at the observation deck. "It's remarkable, isn't it? 6 months ago, they considered us too primitive for basic medical technology. Now they're asking us to help them solve problems they've struggled with for centuries." Chen Wei nodded. "Humans have always been adaptable, but I think what really changed everything was that we finally stopped trying to prove we deserve respect and started demanding it." "Do you think it will last?" Thompson asked. "This new cooperation?" Chen Wei looked out at the bustling traffic of ships from dozens of species, all working together to build a better future. "Dr. Thompson, humans have spent our entire history turning enemies into allies, problems into opportunities, and obstacles into stepping stones. Yes, I think it will last, because now everyone understands what we've always known. Cooperation is stronger than domination, innovation is more powerful than tradition, and equals accomplish more than masters and servants ever could." The galaxy had learned what happened when humans said no. They had discovered that the species they had dismissed as too young and too aggressive was actually too valuable to lose. And in trying to keep humanity down, they had inadvertently helped humanity rise to heights no one had imagined possible. 3 years later, the transformation was complete. The old Stellar Assembly building had been converted into a museum, a monument to the failures of hierarchical thinking. In its place, the new Geneva station orbited Earth as the beating heart of galactic civilization, where representatives from over 300 species now worked as genuine equals. Admiral Chen Wei walked through the bustling corridors of the station, observing the remarkable sight of former enemies collaborating on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. A group of Zenturi engineers worked alongside human technicians to develop new atmospheric processing systems. Ethereal energy beings shared data streams with synthetic collective units to solve complex mathematical problems. Even the most isolated species were now participating in the galactic community. In the central laboratory complex, Dr. Thompson supervised what had become known as the Miracle Project. The goal was ambitious beyond anything attempted before, developing technology that could extend the lifespan of every known species in the galaxy. What made it remarkable wasn't just the scope, but the cooperation required. Over 200 different species had contributed their biological expertise, and humans had provided the innovative framework to make it all work together. Dr. Thompson called out researcher Velnara, a crystalline being whose species had once considered biological life forms to be primitive. "The latest test results are extraordinary. Your human approach to genetic modification has solved problems we didn't even know existed in our own biology." Thompson smiled as he reviewed the data. The human technique of approaching problems from multiple angles simultaneously had revolutionized research across the galaxy. While other species tended to follow linear research paths, humans instinctively explored parallel possibilities. leading to breakthrough discoveries at unprecedented rates. The beautiful thing, Thompson explained to a mixed group of alien researchers, is that every species brings something unique to the table. The Zenturi's pattern recognition abilities, the ethereal's energy manipulation techniques, the synthetic collective's processing power, when we combine all of this with human adaptability, we achieve things none of us could accomplish alone. In the diplomatic wing of the station, Ambassador Sarah Chen found herself in a position she had never expected, mediating a dispute between two alien species who had been locked in conflict for centuries. The molten cores and the ice dwellers had been natural enemies due to their incompatible environmental needs. But human innovation had found solutions that allowed both species to thrive. Ambassador Chen, the molten core representative, pulsed with heated colors. Your people's thermal regulation technology has allowed us to establish colonies in temperate zones for the first time in our history. We are grateful beyond words. The ice dweller delegate, whose crystalline form sparkled with approval, added, and the cooling systems have enabled us to visit warm worlds without discomfort. Humans have given both our species gifts we never dreamed possible. Sarah felt a deep satisfaction as she watched former enemies shake hands, or whatever their species equivalent was. This was what humanity had always envisioned, a galaxy where differences were celebrated rather than feared, where cooperation replaced competition. Meanwhile, in Earth's solar system, something unprecedented was taking place. The first galactic university was under construction, a massive educational complex that would bring together students from every known species. Human educational philosophy, which emphasized critical thinking and creative problem-solving over rote memorization, was being adopted throughout the galaxy. President Santos, now in her second term, slid in the Oval Office reviewing reports from across human space. The numbers were staggering. Human colonies had expanded to over 100 worlds, but more importantly, these colonies served as centers of innovation and cooperation rather than exploitation. Each world was developed in partnership with local species, creating mutual benefit rather than resource extraction. Madam President, her chief of staff announced, "We have a priority communication from the Outer Rim expedition. Commander Park has discovered something remarkable." The holographic display activated, showing Commander Jennifer Parks standing on the bridge of the exploration vessel Pathfinder. Behind her, the view screen showed a massive structure of unknown origin, clearly artificial, but unlike anything in any known database. "Madam President," Commander Park reported, "we've discovered what appears to be an ancient space station, possibly millions of years old. But here's the interesting part, it's not abandoned. There are life signs aboard, species we've never encountered before." This was the moment humanity and its galactic partners had been preparing for. The old assembly would have approached such a discovery with warships and demands for submission. The new galactic community had a different approach. "Commander," President Santos replied, "you are authorized to make first contact using the new Geneva protocols. Remember, we approach as friends seeking cooperation, not conquerors demanding submission." The new Geneva protocols represented everything humanity had learned about building relationships with alien species. Instead of demonstrating military might, first contact teams shared knowledge, offered assistance, and respected the autonomy of newly discovered civilizations. Dr. Linda Chang, the expedition's xenobiologist, worked alongside diplomats and cultural specialists to decode the alien communications. What they discovered was extraordinary. The ancient station housed a confederation of species that had been isolated from the galaxy for millions of years, preserving technologies and knowledge that had been lost to time. They called themselves the Eternal Archive, Dr. Chang reported. They'd been waiting for a civilization mature enough to handle their knowledge responsibly. According to their historical records, they've been contacted by dozens of spacefaring species over the millennia, but none were deemed ready for what they guard. The implications were staggering. The Eternal Archive possessed technologies that could solve energy crises, extend lifespans indefinitely, and even manipulate space-time itself. But they would only share this knowledge with a civilization that had proven it could use power responsibly. What convinced them that we're ready? President Santos asked during the briefing. Commander Park smiled. They've been monitoring galactic civilization for the past 1,000 years. They said the transformation that occurred after humanity joined the galactic community was the first time they'd seen a species choose cooperation over domination when given the opportunity for absolute power. The Eternal Archive's decision to share their knowledge with the New Geneva Alliance marked the beginning of what historians would later call the Golden Age of galactic civilization. Technologies that had been theoretical dreams became practical realities. Diseases that had plagued species for millennia were eliminated. Environmental restoration became possible on a galactic scale. But perhaps most importantly, the principles that humanity had fought for, equality, cooperation, and mutual respect, became the foundation for relationships with hundreds of newly discovered civilizations. The galaxy was no longer a hierarchy of dominant and subordinate species, but a true community where every voice mattered. Admiral Shen Wei, now Grand Admiral of the Galactic Defense Force, stood once again on the bridge of the Terra Nova. But this time she wasn't looking at Earth. She was observing the construction of the first intergalactic exploration vessel, designed to carry representatives from 50 different species to the Andromeda Galaxy. "Admiral," her aide reported, "the Andromeda mission is requesting final authorization for departure." Chen Wei looked at the magnificent ship that represented everything humanity and its partners had accomplished together. It was more than a vessel, it was a symbol of what could be achieved when species worked together as equals. "Authorization granted," she said. "Let's see what wonders await us among the stars." As the exploration vessel engaged its drives and began its journey to another galaxy, Chen Wei reflected on the remarkable transformation that had occurred. Humanity had started as supplicants begging for acceptance, had become exiles withdrawing in frustration, and had ultimately emerged as leaders showing the galaxy a better way forward. The age of human equality had begun, and with it, a new chapter in galactic history where all species could reach for the stars together. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and for the first time in galactic history, every species would explore it as equals, united in their diversity and strengthened by their cooperation. The greatest human achievement wasn't technological or military, it was proving that strength came not from domination, but from lifting others up. And in teaching the galaxy that lesson, humanity had secured not just their own future, but the future of all intelligent life among the stars.